your hands together for Greg Giraldo. Give him a big hand.
Greg Giraldo grew up in Queens in the mid-'60s.
Everyone assumes that I'm Italian, but I'm not. My parents are from South America. And when people hear that, they always react the same way. Like, wow, man, you don't seem Hispanic. Like to give me the biggest compliment they could think of.
The Giraldo family shared one key priority.
Education, not just with our dad, but with our entire family, has been a huge focus.
His parents helped him get into Regis High School, one of the most prestigious high schools in the country.
You know, scholarship, it's where Fauci went to high school. It's where Colin Jost went to high school. It puts you on a track for a level of success that many can't understand.
Naturally gifted, Giraldo excelled at school.
He's the prodigal son. He is the firstborn in his family. He goes to Columbia.
His counselors recommended that he apply for law school. And without studying, he took the LSAT and scored in the 99th percentile of all test takers.
And so, Greg Giraldo went to law school. And not just any law school.
He graduated from Harvard Law. He attended around the same time that future President Barack Obama was at Harvard Law School as well.
After securing 2 Ivy League degrees, Giraldo took a job at one of the most prestigious law firms in America.
Greg and I met at Skadden Arps, the law firm. He dropped by to introduce himself, and instead of saying, hey, I'm Greg, he came and pretended like he was an ambassador for the firm, you know, sold the firm and how exciting it is to be here and so forth. And it was clearly he was being ironic.
He did not want to be a lawyer. It wasn't this calling he had as a young child.
I remember once, Greg strolls in around 2, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You know, they've been looking for you. And he told the story. He had been out with his friend. They were, whatever, drinking, and it sounded like a good idea to go to the open audition for Tony and Tina's Wedding, which was this very schlocky show.
One of the directors said, you know, you're really funny, and that sort of sparked this interest.
Bored stiff by the corporate world, Giraldo started hanging out in New York's thriving early 90s open mic scene.
I met Greg Giraldo on June 12th, 1993 at the New York Comedy Club.
That's pretty precise.
It is precise, because that was the first day I ever did stand-up comedy. The only other comedian on the show at like 5 in the afternoon in the summer was Greg Giraldo, sweating, very nervous. We just started talking, we became pals immediately.
I met Greg at this kind of paid open mic. You had to pay to go on. And so the only people that really pursued stand-up in the very early 90s were people that were mentally ill or people with poor judgment. He was in a suit and I was in a suit because we both had day jobs.
This stuff wasn't very sophisticated, but he was just so awesome at it that he killed. When the night ended, everybody rushed up to him and were all over him saying, you can do this. And it was pretty clear he was gonna be able to do it.
Giraldo seized on that early success.
He hated working as a lawyer. He had a good result from his first few times as an open mic comedian, and he thought, I'm gonna do this.
Jim Gaffigan. You know, one of the worst comics I've ever seen in my life. It's, you know, frankly, it's people like him that have ruined comedy, I think.
It was pretty bold for Greg switching from being a high-powered lawyer to something that wasn't viable. An interesting thing to understand about Greg is that he was somebody who won at everything. Not only was he very funny, but like the track record of his life was that of success.
Are we really as happy as a country? Are people really laughing out loud as often as they say that? Because that would be one fucking psychotic nation if we're like, oh, hey, just having lunch.
The thing that Greg had was this energy, this mental energy. In a time when people were being a little more open on stage, he was quickly identified as special.
I was out on the street the other night. This homeless guy asked me for money, and I was about to give it to him, and then I thought, he's just gonna use it on drugs or alcohol. And then I thought, that's what I'm gonna use it on.
Greg was instantly respected. He was an original thinker. He was a thinker.
I mean, scientists have pretty much proven that if there had been a 1/4,000,000th percentage difference in either direction in temperature or velocity, that the universe would have never formed after the Big Bang. It would have collapsed back in on itself or expanded infinitely outwards, which proves beyond a doubt that I once read an article I didn't understand, and
Man, was that guy educated. I mean, he knew all sorts of facts beyond his critical thinking skills.
Hillary Clinton is probably going to get indicted on whitewater charges. And because Clinton's still president, he gets to decide whether to pardon her or not. He gets to decide whether to pardon his own wife.
Giraldo found his voice early, and before long, he was auditioning for the world's most prestigious comedy festival.
Just for Laughs, where millions gather every year, making Montreal the kingdom of comedy.
Greg auditions for the Montreal Comedy Festival. It could be life-changing. And when I say life-changing, I'm saying you do a 7-minute set. A television network will give you $500,000 to develop a show. That show will be on air in 6 months, 8 months. Your life could change dramatically.
I'm Rick Dorfman, longtime comedy manager, and was Greg's manager for I don't know how many years. An agency, CAA, which is one of the biggest, they called me and said, we want to sign Greg, and we want Greg to be our choice for New Faces.
Giraldo trekked north to appear in the New Faces showcase at the Montreal Comedy Festival, and he killed.
My phone blew up. There wasn't a network or studio that didn't want to meet with him.
The night he did his set, he got offered a development deal, and he called me, and he was like, I got it. I got the gold ring.
Well, let's see, my parents raised a Latino.
Giraldo's hit set at the 1995 Montreal Comedy Festival netted him his own network sitcom.
I could put a rider on your contract. Hell, I could put a low rider on your contract.
The premise of Common Law is Greg Giraldo plays a Latin attorney in a largely Caucasian law firm.
In the 90s, the trend was to develop shows around a comic's material.
What are they doing in that back room?
You know, Seinfeld and Mad About You, Drew Carey, those types of shows were blowing up. So there was a lot of talk about diversity and finding Latin comedic talent to center shows around. Greg really fit that bill in every sense of the word.
Excuse me.
Excuse me, Ms. Scissorhands.
My name is Diana Maria Riva. I am an actor.
He called to congratulate me?
Well, his exact words were up yours, but I know what he meant.
I was shocked to see how well Greg did with his acting. His timing and his comedy was great, and Greg, with his quick-witted intelligence, was able to keep up. So we were a great little team.
Lucy, I'm home.
With his ambition and tireless work ethic, Giraldo believed his show would be a hit, but he struggled against certain network pressures.
They would say things, they would want him to be more stereotypical.
I don't think anyone ever thought of Greg as a Latin comedian, ever. And the network wants to Spanish it up.
Greg Giraldo hated the term Spanish it up.
Hey, here we are. Hey, check out this character. Can you believe he is Latin and a lawyer? Oh my goodness, we've got to watch that show.
It was not really an organic take on who he was, even though it was supposed to be who he was.
He felt like that was not the right thing to do, but we were both afraid, like, who do you talk to? And would we be hurting our chances of getting on the air?
With the pressure of being a Latino lead of a show and being that it was his first show, the weight was definitely on his shoulders.
Giraldo wouldn't have to shoulder the burden for very long. Common Law was canceled after 4 episodes because of poor promotion, a lousy time slot, and low ratings.
I'll never forget when the news came that they said, we're pulling the show off the air. So I got a little teary-eyed, and when he looked over and he saw me, he just said, please don't cry. Please don't cry. And then I could see in his eyes that he felt responsible. And he just kept saying, I'm so sorry. That's when I realized how much of this was on his back. He was Atlas, you know, and thought, and looked at it as, I failed this show.
Giraldo was in the habit of winning. Common Law's cancellation was his first taste of failure, and it would not be his last.